Okay, 7th grade. So today is Tuesday, May 19th. We are on page 29 in our reading packet. I know we might have skipped ahead a little bit, but this is where we are going to be for right now. So today we're going to be talking about figures of speech. And then we're going to do the bottom of page 29 together, this guided practice, and then you guys will do page 30 on your own. But yeah, for today we're going to be talking about figures of speech. So figures of speech are often included in different types of writing, and they're expressions that suggest ideas and feelings beyond the actual meaning of words. So what that means is that when we always say literally, right? Like he's literally so annoying, she's literally this, he's literally that. Literally means that's what it actually is. Okay? So this is talking about sort of an abstract, or it's not literally meaning that, it's meaning something else, or it's standing for something else. And this will make a little bit more sense once we get into some examples. So one figure of speech is an allusion. So in an allusion, which is what we're going to be looking at today, a writer refers to a well-known person or situation, such as from a literary work, the Bible, or mythology. So when we think of mythology, you can think back to when we were reading Percy Jackson. You guys read that with Mr. A, and then I was there a little bit at the end when you were reading it. That's mythology. That is what mythology is all that kind of mystical sort of stuff. So writers use allusions to deepen a reader's understanding of the person or situation they're writing about. An allusion brings vivid, meaningful associations to mind. So we're going to look at the allusions in this chart. So it says, and this is sort of really similar to metaphors, right? So a simile is where we compare something using like or as. So we would say, he was as fast as a cheetah. Okay, that's a simile. But if you said he was a cheetah running across the track field, then that's a metaphor. So it's just comparing something to something else, but you're not literally saying he was actually a cheetah. Okay? So it says Gus was a good student, but algebra was his Achilles heel. So it explains the meaning here. So it says Achilles is a mythical hero who died when an arrow struck his heel, his only weak spot. This mythological allusion means that algebra is Gus's weak point. So he's a good student, but he's not good at algebra, because Achilles' heel is like a Greek myth where this guy, his heel was his only weak point. So it's saying that his Achilles' heel was algebra because that was his weak point. The next one says Gus didn't understand algebra, and it had been an albatross around his neck for weeks. So this says the albatross is a seabird killed by the sea captain in the poem The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. Its death brings worries and problems. This literary allusion means that algebra is a problem for Gus. Okay, so the albatross is when the seabird was killed by the sea captain, and that brought on worries and problems. So it's saying the albatross for Gus is that he's not very good at algebra, right? The last one says, tomorrow Gus would meet his Goliath when he took a math test. So this is like a story from the Bible. So there's a story of David and Goliath. Goliath is like this giant, like literally a giant warrior, and he battles David. And it means that the math test, if the math test is like Goliath, it means that it's like this big, daunting, scary thing that he is kind of worried about having to deal with. Okay? So let's take a look at these example questions together at the bottom, and then you guys will do page 30 on your own. So it says underline, we're going to highlight, but that's fine. Underline each allusion, identify it as literary, biblical, or mythological, then discuss its meaning with a partner. write your ideas on a sheet of paper. I'm just going to write them at the bottom here. But yeah, so it says you might recognize some of these illusions, but if you're unsure, circle the words that you think are an illusion in each sentence. Type the words into a search engine to figure out what the illusion refers to and what it means. So we'll go ahead and get Google pulled up here. That way we can be ready. We'll get Google pulled up here. That way we can search it if we need to. So it says, we're looking for, so basically whenever you don't know the illusion, you're looking for something that maybe kind of doesn't fit in or kind of doesn't make sense, something that you don't understand the meaning of, and that's probably the illusion there. So it says, every time Gus tried to do an algebra problem, he felt like he tumbled down the rabbit's hole. So here, just to go ahead and do the first one, down the rabbit's hole is going to be our illusion here. So what type of illusion is it? Well, if you don't know, you can go ahead and Google it. So down the rabbit's hole meaning. So we see a picture of, if no one knows what this is, that's Alice in Wonderland, right? So it says, used especially in the phrase down the rabbit hole or falling down the rabbit hole. A rabbit hole is a metaphor for something that transports someone into a wonderfully or troubling, surreal state or situation. So we already know that he's not good at algebra, right? Or doesn't feel like he's good at algebra. So we would say falling down the rabbit's hole means that he fell into a bad or troubling situation. And then if it's from Alice in Wonderland is a book, so that makes it a literary. Because we're identifying it as either literary, which means it's in a book, biblical, which means it's in the Bible, or myth, which means it's from mythology. So number 2 here says, Mom said to Gus, is anything wrong? You look like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. So I think many of us have heard this before, carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. Now, even I don't know what specifically that comes from, right? Carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. I've heard that before. I know that it means, now can we think about what it means without looking it up? Yeah. So what does carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders mean? Well, it means that he is really stressed about it. And worrying about it constantly, right? Now, we don't know whether this comes from literary, biblical, or mythological, so let's look up carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, meaning. So if you look at who carried the weight of the world on his shoulders, we can click on that. It immediately says Atlas and then mythology. So we know that this comes from mythology. So let's look at our next one here. It says, Gus debated whether he should tell Mom his worries or just eat, drink, and be merry while he could. So, obviously the end part is kind of the part that's confusing here. So, eat, drink, and be merry while he could. So, when we think about eating, drinking, and being merry, I've heard that phrase before. That just means that we are able to do things without worrying, right? So, he is able to do things for fun without worrying. Now, where does that come from? Well, let's go ahead and look. Where does eat, drink, and be merry come from? Well, if we look here, it says, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. We should enjoy life as much as possible because it will be over soon. The saying is based on verses from the biblical book of Ecclesiastes and Isaiah. So we know that it is a biblical, if I could spell, biblical reference. Okay, so let's look at the next one. It says, his sister Bianca said, chill, Gus, you're making much ado about nothing. So obviously when we start using fake words, that's probably going to be, well, not fake words, but weird, strange words we don't use in everyday language. That's going to be an indicator that that's going to be our allusion. So it says, much ado about nothing. So when we think about that, we could think he's making a big deal out of nothing. So that's our meaning here. He's making a big deal over nothing. Now, what does that come from? So we would say, what does much ado about nothing Well, Much Ado About Nothing is a comedy by William Shakespeare. It was written, so we know it is a literary allusion. Now let's take a look at our last one. It says, Gus felt like Big Brother had been watching him and wondered, how does Bianca know my worries? So, Big Brother is our allusion here. Now, I think most of you are probably going to jump to thinking about the TV show, which is fine. We can think about it from that angle, but Big Brother actually is from something else. So what is the show Big Brother? What's the premise of Big Brother? Well, if anyone's seen it, it's where all those cameras are watching those people. So he feels like he's being watched, and his sister knows his secrets, right? That's what Big Brother is. It's like Big Brother's always watching because they're always looking for that. So where does Big Brother come from? It's probably just going to give us the show. No, it didn't. So the term Big Brother originates from George Orwell's novel 1984. So again, we have another literary allusion. So it is totally okay to Google where these allusions come from, just like we did. I honestly didn't know. I knew where a couple of these allusions had come from, but I didn't know where all of them had come from. So it's totally fine to look those sorts of things up. So what you're going to do here, which I don't think you have to look up anything here. No, you don't, because they give you a chart with the meaning. But it's going, or not with the meaning, but where the allusion came from. So whether it's biblical, literary, mythological, all of that is in this chart. And then you guys just have to find the meaning of that allusion based on where it came from and the context in the sentence. So you guys only have 4 questions today. So I want you guys to do those on your own. If you have any questions, I'll be available during office hours today.